Is the Nike Alphafly the problem that led to Conor having those injuries? Now, I just want to address this because yesterday I finished the Netflix series and watched the 4th episode where he's building up to the Dustin 3 fight. And I'd seen this before. I'd seen Conor wearing Nike Alphaflys on a bicycle, so riding a bicycle with probably the most expensive running shoe in the world, and so much technology in that running shoe, and such a high stack height, which is what I'm going to delve into now. Now, when you're wearing that shoe, and when you're wearing the next percent as well from Nike, you're up high, you're 4 centimeters off the ground. So that leads to, unless you're running absolutely perfectly and you're just using it for running, that leads to a level of instability. And it also takes stress away from the calf. So the calf isn't having to do as much work. So you're being propelled forward. You're able to use the big power muscles, the glutes and the hamstrings to propel yourself forward. But you've got your toe, ankle, knee has to be super aligned in order for you to not be unstable. If you're overpronating, or supinating just a tiny little bit, that if you can imagine if you're wearing stilts or if you're on stilts and you're up 1 meter or 1.5 meters, if you overpronate a little bit, that's going to take that angle so much more. And it's exactly the same when you're 4 centimeters high. It's going to make you, and I've got pictures of this to prove it, of me running in that exact shoe and what it did to me, because my as I was hitting the floor, yes, my toe, ankle and knee was all aligned, but there was a level of pronation there which was accentuated by me being on that stack height. So when I then see Conor not just riding the bike, which is one thing which you're kind of thinking, has he got an endurance coach? Is there somebody telling him that he should be clipped into those pedals so that he's using the whole muscle range within the legs in order to move those pedals around? You know, pulling up with the quad, pushing down with the hamstring and glutes. Much better when you're in. Much better for you when you're riding the bike when you're clipped in. That was another thing, but not so bad when you're actually in the Alphafly. But then I saw him sparring in them. I saw him running in them, and essentially Conor or Conor's team has just gone into a shop, or maybe he's sponsored by Nike in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure. Perhaps that's something to do with it. But I feel that probably with the Reebok partnership around the UFC at that time, he wouldn't have been able to. So I think that he's just gone into the shop and just gone, give me 10 pairs of the best running shoe that you've possibly got. And they've gone for the most expensive, thinking that that's the best. It's absolutely not the best for somebody riding a bike. It's absolutely not the best for somebody running as easy as Conor is running, and even sprinting. And it's absolutely not the best for sparring. The level of instability that it gives you, it takes pressure off the calf. So you're not doing as much work with the calf. So you're using the big power muscles, the glutes and the hamstrings to propel yourself forward. But having ran a lot in the next percent and the Alphafly, unless you're hitting the ground perfectly and it's a mid-foot strike, there's no pronation or supination, the level of instability, if you think about the amount of steps you're taking, 180 to 200 steps per minute, adding that up over a marathon, adding that up over the week volume, over the month volume that you're actually running in those shoes. And a lot of athletes run all the runs. I know a lot of athletes who do all the runs, including their easy runs and recovery runs in the next percent, because they're so comfortable, so light, the calf is not working as it should. So that's why it's so important to have a shoe rotation when you're running. It's got to be in a flatter shoe and a lower drop shoe for some of the time, just to give your calf, just to engage your calf more and give it a lot more work to do and strengthen the calf. And then to see the main problem that Conor had was obviously broke the tibia and fibula in the end, but he'd broken his foot in a previous training camp. So he had that sort of, it's always hanging over you, especially if you've broken something. If you've got a stress fracture, I think that was misdiagnosed in a previous fight. Maybe coming up against Khabib, I think that camp where he kind of like got an injury to the foot and it was bruising, or it was diagnosed as bruising, and then I think in the end it was okay. But it sets you back a couple of weeks. It sets you back in a way that he wasn't able to go hard in those couple of weeks, and he kind of used that as an excuse in the Khabib fight that it wasn't perfect. But that's somebody who's trying to attack training, trying to, in John Kavanagh's words, he's just kind of going into the gym every day, sparring with people, beating people up, wanting to win fights. It was a very negative energy he took to the Khabib fight when it was just the revenge, it was bad blood. It was him wanting to destroy Khabib, which, not a good tactic to kind of go back. And so he didn't have the perfect training in around there. But just going back to the shoe, absolutely the wrong choice. And it blows my mind a little bit that clearly clearly there's nobody, despite seeing Conor run quite a lot, seeing Conor sprint quite a lot, and seeing Conor on the bike a lot, whether it's in Dubai, whether it's in Vegas, and there's a procession of cars behind him, which always makes me laugh. It's quite clear that he doesn't have an endurance coach. And there's not somebody with a running background or a cycling background. I see him a lot on the road as well. But his primary problem in a lot of the fights that have gone past the first round has been his engine. Conor is primed to knock out people very, very quickly. Cerrone within 40 seconds, Jose Aldo within sort of 15, 20 seconds. And that looks brilliant. And as Conor talks about in his highlight reel, that will look brilliant for them. But what about the fights when it's gone on 2, 3, 4 rounds and Conor's just not been able to keep it? Perfect example being the Nate Diaz fight. Nate took that first fight on 10 days. Just on triathlon training and sort of being in the gym and keeping himself sort of in, but not in perfect shape, but so much, it's a much bigger engine than Conor. Nate Diaz has a great engine for a fighter because of his diet, because of his frame, because of his lifestyle. Much bigger engine than Conor. And Conor is essentially a sprinter, lots of fast twitch muscle fibers. So to not have an endurance coach specifically in that camp, very strange, and I know it's kind of like a sprint round that you're doing, and lots kind of like, essentially like a footballer who's kind of a midfield footballer who's all over the field, and is kind of like sprinting 80 meters 1 second, he's sprinting 20 meters, and then he's kind of jogging for the next 3K, and then all of a sudden a sprint. But it feels as if you're making silly decisions like wearing the Nike Alphafly on the bike, running, sprinting, even sparring, it feels as if there's nobody in Conor's corner, in his team, that he's got as an expert to build that engine, which of all the tools that Conor has, you'd feel that he would want to display them into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round when it came to that point. So yeah, just my take. I don't feel that the Nike Alphafly or the Next Percent is causing any injuries, but I feel that if you don't rotate your shoes, and this is just for a runner, Conor shouldn't be in that shoe at all. Like, there's no reason for Conor to be wearing a Nike Alphafly. But if you don't rotate your shoe, if you're running, if you're training for a marathon, you're training for 10K, whatever you're training for, if you're not rotating those Next Percent and a shoe with a high stack height with lots of propulsion forward, the super shoes that we're all seeing from all the different brands now, if you're not rotating those shoes, you're going to come into problems because your calf and the rest of the muscles are not going to be doing the work that they should be doing. And therefore, they're going to get weak. They're going to get underused, and therefore, you're going to come into problems. I've had the same problem myself in 2018. I wouldn't wish it on anybody because it's an annoying problem because you're training very hard, you're training very fast, you're hitting your session times, effort level is low because those shoes, those super shoes are built so that in a marathon, you can glide to 30K. You can glide 3/4 of the way through the race and feel as if your muscles are still fresh. And then you dig in for the final 10K, but on much fresher muscles. That's what the Alphafly is built for. That's what the Next Percent are built for, along with giving yourself that extra stride length because it's propelling you forward a lot higher. So yeah, it's weird. It's very weird that Conor hasn't employed somebody specifically in that area to look after his cardio.